Hey, it's day one of my March of the Mammoth, and yes, reading Don Quixote, going for the a vague approximation of the Spanish pronunciation of it, not the British. Even quixotic is a word in English, but Don Quixote I'll go with. Um, yeah, it's day one. We're nearing the end of the day. I'm hoping to get another good hunk of reading in, but I've got 65 pages so far, and I'm really enjoying it. I'm really enjoying it. It is funny and thoughtful and a little sad, even already at the start. I'm still already very poor Rachinanti, the horse, poor horse, nag before. Rachin ante, Rochinati. He's poor horse already, and maybe poor Don Quixote or whatever his name is, because it's not Don Quixote. He names himself Don Quixote. It's not even a Don. Really, he's a humble hidalgo who his name isn't Don Quixote, but yeah. So I'm arming myself as I go along just because I want to get the most out of the book as I can. Kind of like if I'm going to plunge in, I want to plunge in as much as I can, which, for me means a lot of Wikipedia articles. Look at the Wikipedia article on Cervantes, on the Battle of Lepanto. I've also found BBC in our time. They do they have a radio show and a podcast, which is how I in Canada can get it, where they'll do subjects where they'll pull in experts and they'll get three experts talking about stuff and sometimes having different viewpoints, and you get a real quick, intense little brief snapshot. And they have one on Don Quixote or Don Quixote. I can't remember how they say it now. I'm not going to confuse myself, but they have them talking about Don Quixote, and that being an interesting one. Also, they also, because he is Don Quixote was not Don Quixote, Cervantes was a soldier for a good hunk of, first kind of good hunk of his life, and was a soldier at the Battle of Lepanto. And so I listened to a whole podcast about that, a clash between kind of this amalgam, this whole, is it the Holy League, Spain, Venice, the Pope, and others, going up against the Ottoman Moors, and that battle, which that was the one that they won, so that's the one that gets remembered in the West. Not like they regrouped afterwards and kind of came back for them, but that was a battle where on these bizarre, we're just basically talking floating platforms. They sailed up to each other, and then it was basically a battle of soldiers on the water, on on these gigantic pontoons, galleys that they all rowed. This is no sails at this, not much in the way of sails at this point, and Cervantes lost the use of one of his arms, his left arm, maybe his arm, in this battle. Still was a soldier for a while afterwards, but he was something he apparently was immensely proud of, that he participated in this. And I mean, it's obviously it's just one of these big bits of history that's still known today as at least a psychological victory for for Christendom against the Moors, who were the Muslim forces, who were really kind of encroaching, coming in to thing. And indeed, Spain is one of these places that for like 400 to 700 years had Arabic occupation in it. It's deeply influenced by it. Even Don Quixote's name, that X there, is from the Arabic, and it's like even within the very name of Don Quixote himself, there's that kind of an influence. I've also been listening to a couple of lectures. One was given at, I guess, the Library of Congress by William Eggington, and him kind of pumping up his book, The Man Who Invented Fiction: How Cervantes Ushered in the Modern World, and this kind of idea of kind of the modern novel coming from Don Quixote, the idea of of Egerton talking about how kind of bracing the idea of how how to exercise imagination in a culture that's actively trying to kind of like control imagination. And the way is to say it's all made up. It's a fiction. And this being a really vital part of our culture today. Now, I'm not particularly full into this because, like, well, how is this different than a play or something like that that's staged on a thing? Don Quixote is famously also kind of something that seems to be satirizing the chivalry, tales of chivalry before it, fantastical tales. And a lot of this, even right now, it's Don Quixote imagining all this fantastic chivalry. He is a knight and he is going up against giants, which are actually windmills, as Sancho Panza kind of points out fruitlessly. So, but that idea of kind of the imagination of how can imagination work, and I mean, famously, this is kind of one of these cool things of someone who's obsessed with reading. This is like the first novel. If it's the first modern novel, it's a novel about somebody who read too much and who was driven mad by reading too much and believing maybe his imagination becoming overactive and not being able to see the real world. Though, even at the start here, you can tell that there's also some stuff here of like, what's reality, what the church wants to tell you is reality, what the government wants to tell you is reality, your own delusions and stuff like that, and sifting that, and how something like imagination, being able to actively engage with imagination is something. Also really interesting is a Yale course thing, which is actually like I think 24 videos, which is basically the course on Don Quixote given by Robert Gonzalez Echevarria. And that's so I'm shoving as much information into myself as possible while I am enjoying Don Quixote. And to top that up, because it's not all just me watching videos, I was also interested, probably tipped off first from one of the experts at In Our Time, of another work that gets mentioned in Don Quixote, where Don Quixote comes home after his first kind of failed adventure and finds his friends and the housekeeper burning all his books of chivalry, and kind of going through them and sort of trying to decide, though it's kind of a rather wearisome exercise, especially the priest finds, of having to go through all the books and decide which ones I should burn, which ones I shouldn't. Maybe we should just burn them all and stuff like that. And definitely, there's some people who are much more keen on just burning them all. And then one of the books, Flies 3. She took so many together, one of them fell to the feet of the barber, who wanted to see which one it was, and saw that it said, "History of the famous knight Tirant le Blanc." "God help me," said the priest with a great shout. "Here is Tirant le Blanc. Let me have it, friend, for I state here and now that in it I have found a wealth of pleasure and a gold mine of amusement. Here is Don Quirelson of Montauban, the valiant knight, and his brother Thomas of Montauban, and the knight Fonseca, not to mention the battle that the brave Tirant waged against the Alania, and the witticisms of the damsel Pleserdemvida, and the loves and lies of the widow Reposada, and the lady Emperitza, beloved of Hippolyta, her squire. I tell you the truth, my friend, when I say that because of its style, this is the best book in the world. In it, knights eat and sleep and die in their beds and make a will before they die and do everything else that all the other books of this sort leave out. For these reasons, since the author who composed this book did not deliberately write foolish things, but intended to entertain and satirize, it deserves to be reprinted in an edition that would stay in print for a long time. There's actually an interesting footnote here saying that in this translation, this is coming from Edith Grossman, who's doing the translation, I'm assuming. In this translation of the sentence, which has been called the most obscure in the entire novel, I have followed the interpretation offered by Martin de One of the problematic issues in Spanish is the word galeriza or galleys, which can mean either ship or publisher's proofs. So I was really fascinated by that, because it is a book that is satirizing earlier works. It's sort of like the movie Airplane with Leslie Nielsen. It is in some ways it's supposedly like a beat for beat remake of an earlier movie that was completely serious about kind of an airplane crash. It's a whole genre of disaster movies, but the disaster movies have died away, and we just now, for most people, I think we only have Airplane, the movie, the silly, funny movie Airplane. But it's like this book here. We still have Don Quixote, but it's like I don't think in popular consciousness, except for maybe like the Knights of King Arthur and stuff like that, we don't really have the stuff that it's referring to. But there is actually a translation of the Tarrant LeBlanc on Gutenberg. It's by a fellow named Rudder, but which seems to be like from 1995, but is for some reason free on Gutenberg. Now, it's not a full unabridged version of the book. It is apparently the original book, which was published in 1490, almost 30 years after the death of the primary author, Jonot Martorell. Probably I'm saying all these incorrectly. It's like it was Catalan in the Catalan language, which I think is, don't quote me, is actually just is Spanish. It's the dominant Spanish form that took over, and indeed that Don Quixote is written in as well. What is apparently maybe seems a little bit elegant, maybe a little bit formal today, but is still very much kind of the modern Spanish language, more modern than Shakespeare's language sounds to our ears today. Considered maybe a bit more accessible. This is when you get in fight between Cervantes lovers and Shakespeare lovers. But yeah, I decided, okay, I'd like to read it. Now, yeah, the thing is, it sounds like it has a lot of interpolations in it, a lot of variety of texts in it, which kind of take away from the actual main story. Now, this is much more of an abridgment, which is showing kind of the main narrative story. And so I've gone like, oh, well, I'm already reading one mammoth in the month. So if I can read something it's a pretty good hard abridgment of a second work, I'll read that. And I've read almost the first chapter. I've read the introduction and the first chapter in that, and that is Looney Tunes bathing in the blood of the infidels kind of stuff. It's like super, super violent and bloody so far, as well as just the bizarre stuff that husbands do to their wives, put their wives through, of like, oh, I'm going to the Holy Land. Oh, I'm going to fake my own death and then come back as a beggar and not let you know, honey. It's like, screw you, babe. That's the opening salvo in that book, which is like, oh, okay, this is going to be a good what the hell book. What the hell's going on here book to read along with the kind of really delightfully funny. There's like slapstick in here, but there's also you can also see that we're gonna it's slapstick with, we're gonna get into the nature of reality here. And it's funny because it's one of these things of like, if Don Quixote is because people often say it's like, well, realism is just a offshoot of the fantasy that has come before. This is realism, the modern novel of kind of, we're gonna actually have human beings that we can recognize, and there's not going to be the fantastical. This is the offshoot where you have somebody who's, oh, look, it's a silly guy who's taken all of our fantasy stories that have dominated our literature, but he's taken it as real, and we're gonna tell his story and have his poor servant kind of coming after him, going, "Sir, let's take care of you." That wonderful pairing, because that's the other thing. I was just finishing Parrot and Oliver, which is very much Parrot. In this book by Peter Carey, is very much the servant to this kind of noble who's a bit deluded, not as deluded as Don Quixote, but is a bit deluded, a bit idealistic there's the echoes. You can see the echoes of that pairing of Don Quixote and Sancho Panza with Panza with Père and Olivier, or with Sherlock Holmes and Watson, with Laurel and Hardy. There's a lot of these kind of odd couples pairings that have echoed throughout our literature, and just sort of that whole idea of what's reality, and am I capturing reality in here, and the kind of the meta text in this book. It's funny how this, and Lawrence Stern, who seems to have been very influenced by Cervantes, this idea of like, how we're recording things. This book, as I've left off, they were in the middle of an exciting fight, but then the author, he had to stop because he couldn't find any more sources for that. He's going to have to go dig up some more. But I'll be back with you. I'll be back with you in the next part, dear reader, for that, because this is a real book. This is really about somebody. This is Don Quixote is a real guy, and we just have to dig up the historian who will write about him. So yes, obviously I am engaged. I'm engaged so far in Don Quixote, and going to go off and read some more. All right, I will leave it there. This 16-minute long video, which this is why I'm not going to bundle this into 1,000 different sections, because then it would be a 5-hour long thing. So I'll probably just put this somewhere. All right, more videos later.